And good day, and welcome to Navigate B2B. I am your host, Steve Ferreira, CEO of Ocean Audit, a global ocean freight overcharge consultancy company in the greater New York City area. That's right, we have made the move, or will make the move soon, to beautiful Weston, Connecticut, where it is just wonderful country and only 50 miles from New York City. So if you're in New York City and you're an importer or exporter, you'll be seeing a lot more of me now that we've got the mask mandates done with and we're ready to go. It's business as usual again. And welcome to FreightWaves today and Navigate B2B. Today, the black abyss that you see behind me is set up here in the Hotel Ace in beautiful New York City. I'm shooting from the Ace Hotel this week because the black abyss that you see behind is part of Containergeddon. It's the deadness of where money and containers go into wasteland. However, in today's Navigate B2B, you will see a portal to the window of your collective business B2B souls. Come with me today through this portal and benefit from the Navigate B2B lifestyle. And I do have a couple of bridges in Brooklyn that if you want me to sell you to. Just kidding. But seriously, one of the reflections that I had today in looking at my show, and it's so glad to be here to all my great friends, fans, and followers, is that Containergeddon, the period that we are in right now with ocean freight, is a dark and nasty place. Right now, it is almost like, I'll never forget, back in 1987, I was supposed to be making sales calls in Oakland, California for Sealand. And it was the days where we had those cell phones that were like this big. And I'll never forget, I drove my Saab 900 from Oakland to Lake Tahoe, Nevada. I thought I'd make some sales calls on the way, and I ended up at a casino later on that day, just for a little flutter of blackjack. And I thought to myself, you know, it's interesting the way that cards are dealt at decks and casinos around the world. And I started to think, that was back in the 80s, and I started to think about 2021, where a lot of my clients are now in this black, dark space. And the cards being dealt are almost like a seedy Las Vegas strip casino, where the dealer, you know, might have ate a couple pieces of pizza, and he's got his hands greasy, and he's dealing you these cards, and these cards are your ocean freight invoices. And, you know, you're getting, you know, a $10,000 hand and a $12,000 hand, except it's not payouts. It's what you have to pay. You're getting dealt a deck of cards. In today's segment of B2B, we're going to talk to you about how you can take a simple 10-minute shift and stop getting dealt this greasy, manipulative deck of cards. By the way, I'm your host, Steve Ferreira, and welcome to Navigate B2B. So how do we begin? How do we take a tremendous problem like Containergeddon and open up a portal so that you, the importer or exporter, can graciously walk through the portal and revert back to your CFO, your controller, your finance directors, that you were a maverick and that you overcame Containergeddon and its slippery slope of greasy, dirty, incomplete, overbilled invoices. This is job number 1A. So what's job 1? Job 1 is you're geared to do what you were geared to do. You're born to be the consummate logistics professional or supply chain professional. or procurement professional, you want to make the best deal for your company. You want to get the best pricing, and you want to move your product to where it belongs. Because your inventory is so low. That's my Joe Biden whisper. And because of the inventory being so low, you'll pay a pretty penny to get the product in. Look at Home Depot. Home Depot is contracting for a vessel, or maybe vessels. Home Depot is paying a pretty penny to go through the portal. Yes, they have seen the light. They have walked through that portal. Are you a fast Freddy, or are you a wilting Wilmer in your supply chain logistics silo? Home Depot is a fast Freddy. If you look, you know what? I took this eye test the other day, and the guy puts this my eye on this thing, this chin, right? And I have to look at, and there's this little farmhouse in the background. It's got a bale of hay, and the farmhouse is red, and you kind of have to focus on this farmhouse. I know you guys know what I mean, right? When you're at the eye doctor. And so I see this silo, and I see this farmhouse, and all I can think about is ocean freight as being a silo. So you have a supply chain silo, you have a finance silo, you have a logistics silo, you have a procurement silo. And these silos have no connectivity. Home Depot has a connectivity because they were fast Freddies. They went to the well, they went to the silo, not a well, and they communicated. They used their creativity to find a solution to Containergeddon. What? No spaces, high rates. Well, let's control our own destiny. Let's get spaces. Yeah, we might pay a lot of money, but we control the outcome. Now, for every Home Depot that a deal like that's been offered, you have the wilting Wilmas, right? The wilting Wilma is the person or the company that gets offered the same kind of conditions as a Home Depot, but they move their supply chain in a glacier-like way, very slow, moving across the frozen tundra. Home Depot, up like a rocket ship. The lesson here is that legacy logistics departments and supply chain teams that do not have good silo connectivity are missing out on the best or premier opportunities that the current state of play in ocean freight shipping allows for them. Now, when you look at the current state of play, there are billions of dollars at stake in terms of, right now, for example, sitting in foreign bank accounts and some U.S. bank accounts is a sum of $5 billion, with a B, dollars of ocean freight overpayments and invoice errors that have been retained by the shipping lines. Now, I would say that 1,000 to 2,000 importers, their share of that $5 billion is a couple 100,000 or 100,000, 200,000 each. We'll have to kind of do the math on it. But the point being is that it's like getting 10 containers for free or 20 containers for free. If you can claw back that extra money, right? I mean, let's just say hypothetically, Home Depot had a team exercise where, based on putting together their container charter ship, They incurred $100,000 internal cost, right, to take away from the CFO's role, the procurement guy's role, the logistics director's role. And so they had a soft cost of $100,000. You can't quantify that, but the cost of salary, labor, time away, time focused off the ball, and this is the issue in the ocean freight industry right now that is the silent killer, is that those monies to do the Home Depot type exercises, they're available just like that. You call me, for example, in my main role at Ocean Audit, and in 10 minutes, I'll typically have $100 or $200 or $300,000 for you. And I just did a webinar a few minutes ago where I named 20 companies where I'm actually holding money in my algorithmic database where, even though I've never engaged with a client, I can make a difference and return soft money to them. Now, it might not be a lot, but the issue here is that the ocean freight environment is a fabric that speaks volumes and can speak to someone like myself. Because remember, in ocean freight, containerized ocean freight into the United States, everything is publicly manifested. Now, what does that mean, publicly manifested? It means that every container that comes into the country is physically declared with 10 to 12 very detailed data points that come into fruition, where somebody like myself that has the 40,000 outlier hours can look at it and say, you know what, I've never met retailer X or chemical company B, but I know from evaluating the manifest records that they would have a refund of, boom, 6 figures. So what do? Ego is a problematic issue in B2B business. Now, before I get into ego and solving the problem on why more companies don't want to get money back, let me talk to you about what some people think will be the #1 best-selling book in America in a few weeks from now. It's my Navigating B2B book coming out, dropping now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble as we speak. Now, in Navigating B2B, I talk about how your greatest arsenal or asset is not your network, but your creativity. So, when you look at Navigating B2B, which is the name of my show and the name of my book, and you go back to how can more beneficial cargo owners make a difference and get over that hump that there's a egocentric issue stopping them from going out there and grabbing part of that $5 billion that's out there and returning it to the companies. And I'll tell you why. It's because many beneficial cargo owners have previously said, the hell with it. We want a one-stop shopping for any of these ridiculous control issues where we might overpay. Now, ocean freight is an art and a science. And the problem with ocean freight is it does not fit into the normal box of a small parcel or LTL or domestic truckload invoice. Ocean freight is a living, breathing organism that needs access to a portal. A freight audit and pay portal designed by a company that specializes in domestic auditing, at best is going to cherry pick and give you a false indicator that your coverage or your completeness on ocean freight remediation is at the highest level. Obviously, freight audit and pay companies do not want to tell you the thousands or millions of dollars that have slipped through the cracks that they are not qualified to capture. Nor necessarily does the owner of the logistics freight audit and payment or finance freight audit and payment procurement decision that made that decision to engage with a freight audit and pay company, nor do they have the desire to go out and say, hey, let's re-examine the overcharges that might have been approved through our existing system. You need to be a maverick if you are to do a due process the right effective way for your BCO organization. And let me address that for a minute. So you might be a logistics man or woman that has previously been thrown into a procurement meeting on a freight audit and payment provider. The freight audit payment provider might have put together some very, very nice PowerPoints for you and have promised the portal. However, I'm here to tell you that that portal is a black hole. It is a black hole for waste and not recovery. So simply put, shifting, or what I like to call the 10-minute shift, is simply putting ego in check and recognizing that in this current environment in Containergeddon, this incredible period that started in 2020 and is persisting through 2022, one must check their ego at the door if you are in control of ocean freight or post-audit or pre-audit recovery at a beneficial cargo owner. Typically, CEOs and CFOs, controllers, and VPs of finance will engage to find the best options for recovery. Smart logistics men and women know that by checking ego at the door and engaging with someone with, let's say, outlier hours like myself. For example, I have 40,000 hours and I know nothing. My wife will tell you I don't know how to paint, I don't know how to mow the grass, but I do know how to audit ocean invoices. So my 40,000 hours were not spent, learning a trade or a skill. It was learning something intuitive, because ocean freight is an intuitive, living, breathing organism. Now, the first thing that ocean freight vendors will tell beneficial cargo owners, actually they won't say it to you, but they'll say it to me behind the scenes. And I've seen this a whole bunch of times. Steve, question, dear ocean vendor, why didn't you refund this $180,000 to the client? Steve, we are not the client's accounting office. We are not a back office accounting office for anyone. If the client wants their money and to achieve a refund for overpaid ocean freight, the onus is on the client to file a claim for those funds. Who has time for that? There are basically 10 ocean vendors out there, out of the hundreds, perhaps thousands, that consistently have the bulk or a greater share of the $5 billion out there belonging to BCOs. Think of it like this. I think there are 5,000 registered ocean freight vendors in the USA. It's probably fair to say the top 100 or 200. Okay, I'll give a little flexibility on this. The point I'm trying to make is that the top 100 or 200 probably have 60 to 70% of the 5 billion. And they have the money. They can't really keep it. But here's the thing. The more time you put, it's the time decay factor. If you allow that overcharge to persist in your ocean vendor's bank account, every month that money stays there, your chance of getting those monies refunded diminishes by a mathematical factor. So one really has to take advantage of the time limitation of recovery. Now, I would say 70% of the people out there don't realize that the federal government gives you a 3-year window, a portal on recovering refunds. As part of the Code of Government Federal Regulations in the U.S. Shipping Act, any vendor that works with an importer or exporter in the United States has a statutory, mandatory 3-year period to issue a refund. The question is asked, what percent of those vendors will voluntarily issue the refund? I'll say 3%. Ergo, the other 97% of the refunds will not be self-serviced by the vendor. They must be self-serviced by the beneficial cargo owner, and that's you. And that's who I'm appealing to today, because I know what it's like when CFOs come in and blast the heck out of me because I missed my budget. Or if you can't answer the question, why are we paying $10,000 for ocean freight? You need my course. Now, I don't sell a course. I'm being facetious. I don't sell anything. In my work, and which I'm trying to ingrain on a process that you may consider, be it with me or someone else, you have the opportunity to get your share of the 5 billion on something that's known as contingency auditing. What is contingency auditing? Contingency auditing opens a portal for you of funds. Think of this portal behind me. It's actually the Chrysler building outside there. But think of dollars floating through that portal. They're not going to float without something on the other side of the equation. And on that other side of the equation is the team between you and I, that Robin Hood and Sherwood Forest, we are now walking in. Instead of walking in a container yard or watching a port crane lift a container up, we're in the Sherwood Forest now, robbing the rich and giving to the poor. Do you think that retailers want to increase their landed cost and pass that cost on to the poor American consumer at the retail level? Of course not. So in order to avoid that, we need to shoot our bow and arrow from our quiver at the most highly suspected ocean freight invoices that are misrated and repatriate that capital back into our corporate treasury so that corporate can then resuscitate those funds and offset the high price of Containergeddon. Now, how soon we forget? Not only have we had Containergeddon, but we've also had something known as the Trump tariffs, China Trade 301 tariffs. Oh, sure, I know what you're thinking. We've had a lot of offsets and refunding of those. Not all of them. So importers have been hit with incredible cost manipulation. And you are not, as an importer, dealing with organized crime or the mafia. Like I dealt with the Taiwanese mafia when I lived in Taiwan. They were really interesting. They were my customers. They had some very unique quirks to them. And it was a challenge, both physically and mentally, for me to deal with this group of guys, but they were big importers. You don't have to deal with the mafia. The mafia does not exist in container shipping. All that exists in container shipping are human beings that need to have a coordinated message that says, hey, stop the madness, and we will not be overcharged as a beneficial cargo owner any longer. And furthermore, when you look at the landscape that's out there, yes, vendors will not be your accounting office. However, you can flip the script. You can, for example, through my service, and maybe there's others out there, achieve $200,000 or $300,000 in post audit. Remember that 3-year rule that I talked to you about. So we'll go back and we'll get those 3 years recovered for you. And then you want a real-time recovery. So why not rob Peter to pay Paul? Use the wooden nickel concept of getting large-scale ocean refunds from the history to fund new real-time containers that you have coming in today, where you want those errors corrected before you pay the invoice. And never overspend or overpay again. It's the concept of doing a post-audit and using the money from the post-audit to fund the pre-audit. Don't have a post-audit refund? Very unlikely if you're using a professional grade service. If you have a post-audit refund, you can get de facto free pre-auditing through a senior expert. For example, XYZ company, if you trust them and they have the ocean chops to do it, someone like myself that has the Malcolm 40,000 hours, outlier type hours, and you can then achieve your savings that way. But if you're not doing either, you're doing one, you're doing it a bit half-hearted, because current contemporary logistics managers and supply chain managers and logistics directors and global logistics directors have to be able to check their ego and use their most important asset, as I speak to in my new book, Navigating B2B, their creativity to work around the very eclectic problem of ocean freight overcharges and overbillings. It is a problem that can be solved. It is a problem that can re-profitize your ocean freight budget, or at a minimum, offset the overcharges that you've incurred. You've been watching Steve Ferreira, CEO of Ocean Audit, on my proprietary show on FreightWaves TV called Navigate B2B. It's a privilege and a pleasure to come at you every Friday and share important B2B messages that impact your ocean freight supply chain and general B2B rules for engagement. I love you all. If you have any questions, get back to me on Steve Ferreira on LinkedIn. through my FreightWaves show, send me a note, Steve Ferreira at steve.ferreira@oceanaudit.com. Love you all. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time on another edition of Navigate B2B. Take care.